Good morning, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here this morning. My name is Cara Graham. I'm from TWD Australia. I'm based in Perth. I'm a financial advisor. If you haven't heard of AFA Inspire before, I am the AFA Inspire State Chair. Hopefully you've heard of us, but just in case, we're a branch of the AFA that is focused on empowering women to believe in themselves and to be confident with all things money and grow prosperous financial futures. You're joining us today for the AFA Inspire Advancing in Financial Advice Roles webinar. So thank you all for joining us. I hope you enjoy today's content. So in terms of just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. So today's webinar gives you 1 hour of CPD. Attendees will be on mute, so I can't see you, I can't hear you. So don't worry if you're not wearing any pants. And we will have plenty of time for questions towards the end of the webinar. Please pop your questions in the Q&A box, not the chat box. It just makes it a little bit easier for us to navigate. So I am joined today by two pretty incredible women, and I want to introduce them now. So Jodie Perram, Director at ITCH, and Amy Morgan, Associate Director, temporarily missing from the screen. So Jodie and Amy are widely known as the corporate matchmakers with heart, and their team of professional consultants provide permanent and temporary placements for white-collar recruitment as well as the mining industry. They are more than a little different, that's for sure, and they're guided by 3 core questions. Is it smart? Is it the truth? And is it different? Each deliver smart solutions for both clients and candidates. They expect the truth and honesty in all of their dealings, and they approach things a little bit differently. I asked Amy and Jodie to join me on this call today as my guests because they are the best recruiters that I know. I've known them both for a number of years, and I really just wanted to get a really honest take and the inside scoop on the job market today. So thank you so much for joining me, Amy and Jodie. Welcome.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having us. Absolutely. Pleasure to be here. I wish I could see you all.
Well, just imagine lots of people without pants on, because that's what you do when you're watching a webinar, right?
And we don't have pants on either. Yeah. No pants there. Excellent.
Awesome. Well, before we get into our questions today, one of the things that I wanted to highlight to everybody on this call is that within the financial advice world, there are lots of different roles that people can get into. I'm an advisor, and that was really my focus when I joined the industry, but that isn't everything, and that isn't the end goal for every single person. I did a little brain jump preparing for this call around some of the different roles I could think of, and these were some that I came up with from there. I'm sure if you spent a little bit of time thinking, we could come up with a few others as well, which is why I put the ... as the last one. But I think the really important message for everybody to take away with is that your career is in your hands, and you can take it in whatever direction feels right, and at different times in your life, with family, with your priorities, with your mental health, different things are going to be more or less important. And, going in different directions is a really positive thing. So make your career whatever you want it to be. So with that said, I might stop sharing the screen so I can see you both a little bit better there, and we can jump into some questions. So why don't we start with, in this post-COVID workplace, COVID is obviously a pretty topical thing. In this post-COVID workplace, what kind of flexibility are you seeing your employers offering their staff in terms of hours and location and things along those lines?
It varies depending on the size of the business. Nationals are a little bit different to your SMEs and things like that. So there definitely was a very, very strong in the beginning after COVID, and we're a little bit different here in WA, and I respect that, that there was still a lot of working from home and a lot of flexibility. But I think we've seen a swing back to the fact that cultures and organisations are really wanting their people back in the workforce. It's really cultures, and people want to work with other people, especially in particular industries where you naturally bounce off each other. It is quite isolating being there, and I think there has been obviously lots of mental health issues and things like that. So it's still there. A lot do 1 day a week now. Same day every week. And then we've got the others where you've got your internationals where they're still doing a rotation, 50% of the workforce in 1 day, 50% in the next day. So it is really case by case scenario, but it's definitely there. Leniency in hours, that's for sure. I think it's all become outcome based. So as long as you are delivering the expectations of your role, how you're delivering that is there's a certain amount of, taking responsibility for yourself.
And look, I've got a bit of a contentious, it's thought-provoking. It's not necessarily that I agree with this, but Ames and I were talking about the potential for there to be, maybe some redundancies and that sort of thing as people choose to sort of look at a cheaper option offshore where it's sort of same, but different. And now this isn't, this isn't necessarily a good solution. And I think some businesses will find out the hard way. But one would have to question if the working from home scenario, particularly in support roles, is potentially going to, for some businesses, sort of fade out and look at that overseas option. As I said, I don't think it's ideal, and I think talent is far better in Australia, but rather than offshoring. But it'll be interesting to watch that space.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. I think we're going to see a bit of involvement. Even if we just have a bit of a skills shortage, which I'll come back and touch on in a moment. Would it be fair to say that this sort of flexible working arrangement and working from home, I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah, it's definitely here to stay.
Yeah, I don't think it's going anywhere.
Yeah.
And I think also, particularly men and, men and women who are choosing to be more proactive or have lack of support in, raising children or getting that work-life balance. I think we've got a greater focus on that, also from a support, family support, but also a mental health, the topic. And I think that's where people just, if they want team members in a skill shortage, which we'll touch on later, they have to look at offering opportunities for part-time people and working from home.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I guess on that note, is this flexibility, is this being advertised in roles? Do you see employers sort of coming forward with this and using this as a way to entice people? Or is this more a reaction to what people want and helping them to fit into the role?
I don't see it advertised.
No, it's really rare, unless it's very much set in stone, like you do work 50% of the time at home. No, it comes on being based a lot of the time after probation and things like that. It comes with trust and a bit of proving yourself and things like that. So I would say it would be probably 20% that's upfront and advertised.
Right.
And I think also in that first period of time where people are learning the job, it's very difficult to get into a business and also understand the delivery of that organisation and how they choose to actually deal with their clients. So, and this is probably, as I said, from a bit of an industry bent, but also across the board. You choose an advisor or an advisory because of the personality they bring to the table. And so if that person's learning from home over those, first few months, it can be difficult to actually get the vibe of what a company is offering and what their culture is. And I think also there is a saying that gets thrown around is with longevity comes flexibility. So that's also something to keep in mind, that what might not be on offer in the beginning might be on offer when someone's entrenched within an organisation and understands the culture and the delivery of the workplace.
So joining the team, learning the culture, building the trust, and then moving to more flexible arrangements from there.
Yeah.
So would it be appropriate for candidates to share this desire at an interview stage with their employer, even if, say, they were saying in a few months or once the trust's built, but can that be an open discussion right from the get-go?
Absolutely, it's crucial. You have to start out how you plan.
Yeah.
If you have open, honest conversations, that's the way your relationship will move forward. And it's really great because it will give everyone the opportunity to go, oh, absolutely, this is part of our culture and this is part of our workforce, or this role is an absolute no-go. It is Monday to Friday, set hours, and then it just means that we are really finding the right people rather than trying to, match the mismatched.
Yeah, get a bum on a seat.
Yes, yeah. Which is what we don't do. No bums on seats.
No bums on seats. And so in the context of financial planning, what role have you seen the highest demand for? And are employee expectations changing from candidates with regards to reward and flexibility, do you find?
Yeah, so I would suggest that there's been a lot of shift and restructures that I've found with the clients that I work in this space. So very much going to that sort of line model where you have the whole team and it filters through, which means that the increase in the support has come quite significant, and lots of the directors are getting their executive assistants. So the model of let's have a look at the opportunity cost of somebody doing that particular task at this salary or doing that task at that salary. So very much working to your space and where you should be working. So lots of support, and of course I'm sure you're all feeling it, definitely a lack of advisors out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just checking before the call this morning, and as at the 30th of June 2021, there were 19,382 advisors, which is a 30% decline. Almost 9,000 advisors have left the industry since 2018 when the Royal Commission was.
That's staggering.
It is. And we have found a lot of them that I have interviewed quite a few that just didn't feel like they could undertake what was now required. So they have actually, believe it or not, gone into those support roles.
Yeah.
Because they still love what they do and the industry they work in, but it's just one step too far.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. We felt so fortunate as a business when those changes came through that all of our advisors were university educated and most had sort of postgraduate degrees. That was already ended that we had at TWD. So when those changes came through, we sort of assessed each person and went, okay, we've got, a few phasey, a few ethical, a few 1 or 2 units. But I certainly feel for some people that had to go and do, 8 whole units or various other things, quite challenging from there. I don't think the stats get kept for the broader industry, all of those different roles that we were talking about, but it would be interesting to know overall how many people we've got. Obviously, there's less advisors, but have we got an excess of people in other supporting roles, do you feel?
I've got an opinion on that. I think as the availability of really good advisors shrinks, what is tending to happen is putting a bubble around them of more support staff, and the ratio we're finding is growing. So for an advisor, where in the past they might have had to have done everything for themselves and had that that support with paraplanning and the likes, what we're finding at the moment is that they're putting in, as Aim said, executive assistants, client services roles. So really the advisor is there to do that high level decision making and advice, and they've got
client facing.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've got all of the people around them, which comes back to the working from home scenario, which is why for some businesses it just simply doesn't work, because they are so short staffed in that advisor space.
Yes. And I do think, as an advisor myself, I think it's all very well and good to have other people in your team supporting in other areas. But at the end of the day, I also think that it's really important as an advisor. Sometimes you actually just need time to sit and think about a client and go, okay, what about this? Or understanding this nuance of their personality or their goals or their behaviour. how can we actually make our plan effective? And I think sometimes if you outsource, whether it's to your team or offshoring or other people who are sort of doing bits and pieces behind the scenes, sometimes you can lose a little bit of that magic. And so I think it's just about finding the right balance between what the advisor does versus what their team does. From there, likely it can go the other way as well. You might have a certain member of your team that's actually way better at that stuff than the advisor, but the advisor's just great at talking to people or great at communicating.
And I think that's where also, there's that saying of managing up or managing down. You might have an advisor who really needs a lot of support but doesn't know how to run a team or actually let go of a lot of the work. And so putting skilled people and really experienced people around them means that they manage up. So they are saying, let me do that. You don't necessarily need to be doing that, So, and then the managing down would be advisors who are very skilled at running a team around them. So it comes back to also finding the right place that matches your skills. And if you don't feel that that's happening, it is a candidate market at the moment. As much as it's a bit scary, there has been a shift, and we need to be offering opportunity to people, for people to grow, because otherwise their ratio and the offers that they get, LinkedIn, the jobs on Seek, the ratio of that they can go out and really have so many options. So we need to be making sure that we're choosing the right people, or companies are choosing the right people where that skills and personality match is right.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And that sort of leads me on to a thought that I had. I remember very distinctly when I was about 18 and I sort of only just joined the industry. I remember somebody at the time that was much more senior to me, and they basically gave me a warning about sharing my personal details and sharing details of my life with people. And I guess it was almost like a warning about being open about who I was. And I remember at the time thinking, okay, I have to be really professional, just keep it about work, that kind of thing. And, all these years on, it's probably 15 years on from having that conversation. And I sort of realized a few years ago, hold on a sec, I'm actually a really cool person, not to toot my own horn, but, people work with me because people work with me because they like me as well. I'm a great advisor and I get great results. But those long relationships that I've had, that comes from me being a warm and open person with people. And so on that note, how important do you think authenticity is at that I guess sort of recruitment and selection phase? Is it to show your personality and your quirks? Is there should you maybe not go too hard in that initial interview? What do you think?
I think certainly one bit of advice is don't dance on tables at the Christmas party. And I think there are certain things that you leave.
The first one anyway.
I think that with a push towards businesses focusing on culture, it's really important that you show your flair in that interview, because it means that the job you're going for and the personality you show means that you're going to land in the right spot. And I think where there can be a real disconnect is the representative that you get at the interview in reality is not the person you're actually getting. So authenticity is really, really important.
So crucial. Absolutely.
I mean, there are things to avoid. I mean, you don't talk about what you do. You don't really need to talk about what you do on the weekends or what you do outside of hours, but you can be authentic about what the things that you need in the workplace as well, to make sure you get job satisfaction. And at this time, I would encourage people to interview the person interviewing as much as the interviewer is there to interview you.
Yeah, and do you see that happening a lot with candidates?
Yes, sometimes they do go a little bit too far. So that comes in a lot of coaching that we do in the beginning, and also being a little bit too honest. There's a difference between showing your personality and your flair to saying things at interview that really aren't appropriate, like talking about an ex-employer. And what are some of the things that you hear that you
there's some cultures where the banter is a certain way and things like that. But, you know, we had somebody drop a, you know, a bit of a swear, quite a substantial swear word in an interview the other day, and they absolutely nailed the whole interview. And then all of a sudden at the end, it was just a very, oh no, it's all over now. So there's lots of different things we look out for. But I think the best advice we can give you is, Jodie has a saying where you should break bread. So it's not about sitting across from a boardroom and interviewing. You really need to take that person out of your office, have a coffee, maybe depending on what your culture's like, have some lunch, have a glass of wine or things like that, to let them actually relax out of that being in an interview mode, and really get to see when they're just in a nice casual conversation, their true self will then come out, and that's what you need to see. It's a big decision.
And we have seen candidates say to us, look, I just don't think I'm going to be able to gel with that leader. Likewise, we have clients who say, look, they're just not going to fit our culture. And it isn't you know, necessarily a bad thing. I think that's good. It stops in 6 months' time someone turning around and saying, you know, they you know, I don't know. It's not working. Yeah, they're a bit chatty. As an example, some people need music in an office environment. Would you necessarily ask that at an interview? No, but you can say, look, describe to me what the, you know, the feeling in the office. How do people work? Do they work quietly? Is there chatter? What's your approach on, you know, music in the office? Not necessarily that, but do you have, you know, noise, or is it silent? Is, you know, it's those sorts of things, because a bright person who's really friendly and loves that sort of interaction is not going to suit an environment that doesn't accommodate, you know, that little bit of banter throughout the day.
Oh, absolutely. You know, even I can just think of our team, and, you know, we've got a few funny people, and we've got a few that need quiet spaces as well. And, you know, we design our office to try and accommodate some different things at different times as well from there. Oh, wonderful. And so we're talking a lot about culture, but I want to move the conversation a little bit towards diversity as well. You know, and diversity obviously means, you know, various different things: young or old, male, female, different ethnicities, different levels of experience. You know, what role do you think cultural diversity plays in a workplace, and particularly at an interview as well?
I think once again, there are things that people need to know about and things that people don't, and particularly, you know, it's really what you feel comfortable with and what you stand for. I had a situation a couple of months ago where someone said, look, I'm a vegan. I'm okay with people eating meat around me, but one thing I'm very passionate about, I won't work for a company that does anything for Melbourne Cup. So, you know, we do get some people like that, and that is sometimes a bit of an awkward conversation to have, because you don't want to represent the candidate as being particularly fussy, but you need to represent that candidate as saying this is their moral stand. Now, the person that ended up employing that, you know, that candidate, you know, said, I just don't have a problem with it. As long as that person respects other people's you know, likes and dislikes or moral standards, that's fine. It can't work, you know, just one way. I just don't think there are certain things that you know, an interviewer needs to know about, unless it's really, really important to the candidate.
Oh,
Bless
absolutely.
you.
Thank you. I strategically tried to mute myself.
So what do you think about, would you think that's sort of fair? Is there anything that you want to add to that, or any experience that you've had?
I mean, ultimately, you know, on the Melbourne Cup sort of side of things, I think ultimately you want people that are perhaps, you know, not going to clash too much. But again, you know, when you gather a group of 30 people, you're going to get different views, whether it's different political views, social views, or whatever it might be. And I absolutely agree with you. I think it's not necessarily about getting everybody in there with the same view, but more that they can work together from there. You're not going to have a big argument. You're not going to have tension. You know, you don't want people in the workplace that can't stand each other. You need people that, maybe they're culturally different, but
Yes.
they find a way to work together as well.
And I think it's also very important that as businesses, we also, sorry, can you bear with me? That's not connected. Jacinta, sorry, we're having a bit of a technology problem. That's not connected to a power source. Sorry. And also, it's important for, sorry, I've lost my train of thought. What was the question?
We're talking about culture of diversity.
Yeah. I think that companies have an obligation to educate their staff as well, particularly with diversity and some of the it's a labyrinth of what clients and we have to deal with at the moment, and knowing what is the right thing to say. I mean, there are plenty of people out there who are offering courses and advice to come in and say, look, this is what we can say, this is what we can't say. And I think that's vitally important that we start educating people within an organisation. And on that note, I think also with diversity, there is definitely a shift to people wanting to employ and engage people who come from a diverse background. That's really important, because I think we are the sum of, it's important to have lots of different views and lots of different passions. And
it only adds value to a business.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I would completely agree with you there. And again, I guess diversity means different things in that sense. And I think I would very much agree with your slogan. It's not about bums on seats. It's not about getting a woman in there or getting somebody from a different country in there. It's really about having them join the team in an authentic way to add a different perspective and play a different role and educate us all and make us more open to some of the things that are available. So I want to talk a little bit now around advancing within roles in financial advice, the sort of topic of the presentation. And I think a pretty contentious thing that sometimes is a pretty big red flag to me when I'm interviewing people is around job hopping, and I think this can go either way, because I personally am a very loyal person. Loyalty is one of my very high values. And I've been in the industry for over 15 years. I've had 2 jobs in that time from there. So I just sort of personally don't job hop, and I see that value, and I've benefited from staying within an organisation and sort of moving up the ranks, so to speak. But it does seem, when I interview people these days, that I do see quite a lot of movement within different organisations. And is it just temptation? Is it because things like Seek and things like LinkedIn, recruiters targeting people, whatever it might be? What's your take on job hopping?
Oh, I have so many opinions on this.
I'm going to leave this one to Ames.
I also have an opinion on longevity in roles too. So to me, it does go both ways. Yeah. Definitely for us, one of the things that is, part of our process is seeing that movement, whether it's movement for movement's sake, which we know then is just for that extra 5,000. It can also maybe be a lightning bolt. Is they actually not good at what they're doing, and they're being found out, and then they've got these, I think you can hide for probably 6 months, and then, so if we're seeing those 12, 18 months consistently without some really, really good reasoning behind it, and I mean relocating other sides of countries and things that, they are definitely warning flags, and that's where we really deep dive, I suppose, into asking those questions and have our ways of finding out. So I'm not a fan of it, and it's basically they call me the blunt recruiter. So normally it's fairly quickly no. But then likewise, I also and Jode has a really good expression for this. There's also and please take this the right way, where sometimes you may become a little bit institutionalized in a way. So if you stay perhaps. Somewhere so long, you get a bit complacent. You're kind of doing the same thing day in, day out, year upon year, unless you can see that steady career progression like you've discussed about yourself, Cara. So it is two ways. There does seem to be a sweet spot that if you're not moving up within your organisation, I'd be asking why.
Yeah.
And then is that why you're shifting? Or if you've reached a peak and you need to move somewhere else to go that next part in your career, absolutely, then it is time to shift.
Yeah, I think they are amazing points. And I think what we do find is anybody who's spent over 10 years, and this is, I don't know the exact statistic, but I mean, it would be well over 80%, is that people after 10 years in a business will often make a poor choice in their next role. And I liken it sometimes to a relationship, because they're so used to knowing their job, knowing the business, knowing, you know, all of those things, how long it takes to get to work, and they make a decision and they go, oh, this just isn't right for me. And then, as I said, it's like a relationship. Not often will people leave a long-term relationship and go straight on to another long-term relationship. There's usually that little bit of, there is a bounce.
The rebound.
Yes.
There is. Jodie is absolutely right. I have seen across my career all the time people who have had these most amazing careers and stays and, you know, progression, and then they think, okay, it's time to change, and then 6 months and they're out. And then you see the longevity again in their next role.
So they're not sort of going on to the next thing and going, I want to go back to what I was doing. The grass wasn't greener. They're sort of figuring out, almost in a sense, maybe what they don't want.
Yes.
And then moving on to,
And sometimes there is power in knowing more power in knowing what you don't want to do rather than what you want to do. And I would really encourage anyone who's looking at making a move is to write down those no-goes. As much as writing the positives.
Wish list, yeah.
And I think that circles back around to being authentic in an interview as well. You know, bouncing can sometimes mean that they get sucked in really to a great storyteller who wants a person to, you know, someone to fill a need within the organisation. And they're not necessarily, you know, there is a saying that you can roll something in glitter, but it's still that something. You know, you can put everything around your business to say, you know, we're amazing at what we do, and you know, these are all the opportunities, and there's career advancement and there's training, but you go into there and reality is that there isn't. So I think some people bounce because they have faith that what they're being told at interview is actually fact, and they get in there and they think this isn't right. And let's think about your industry. There are a lot of good ones, but there are also some businesses that potentially aren't suited to everybody. That's enough.
Yeah. Well, I think I saw this on Itch's Instagram page a little while ago, and it was a job ad saying fast-paced workplace is code word for not enough staff and you're going to work really long hours or something, something along those lines.
Yes.
And you know, I would be sure that a lot of workplaces are really feeling the pinch, you know, for those reasons we spoke about before, with the shortages of advisors and, you know, the difficulty that people get in finding the right people for their team as well, that, you know, perhaps they jump into something and maybe the business has a beautiful ideal for what they want, but their ability to deliver in reality might be challenged by certain factors.
And I think it comes back to also interviewing the interviewer, because the same as we as candidates get judged on job hopping, it would be really interesting for people to say, okay, so what is your retention rate? I mean, in 30 years or a combined 50 years of recruitment, Ames and I got sacked from a role. It's the first time that's happened because we represented the client in an ad very truthfully. We said, you know, this isn't a job for the faint-hearted. This person, you know, at times, you know, can express themselves in a particular way that can make it challenging. But if you're up for the challenge, they're really generous. And this person called and said, I'm so offended by the way in which you've represented me. Yet in the last 12 months, they've had 4 people in that role. So, you know, that's a really good demonstration of, at interview, ask what their retention is like. Why do people usually leave the business? And it would be really interested to see the person being quite flat-footed if they're not actually, doing what they saying they're going to do, or representing themselves in one way, and it's in fact that they're, they get really angry. We often ask, what would you work for you? And people sort of sit back and go, oh, maybe not. Bit of self-reflection.
Yeah.
I would be so annoying to work for. I would totally put my hand up. I'm a bit of a nitpicker, that's for sure.
And you know that, Cara, and you can let them know. And then the expectations are clear and you're setting them up to succeed.
Yes, yeah.
Circles back around to not interviewing in an authentic way.
Yeah.
Because that person can then say, look, I have worked for someone like that. I am also I'm a supportive person, or look, I don't like to be micromanaged. I don't like someone who's a helicopter. At that point, there's a meeting of look, this probably isn't the right role for me.
Yeah. So yeah. Oh, absolutely. That sounds really challenging. That person you were just talking about. I wish them well. I'm sure they've had a few more people come through their door.
But interesting. Actually, I did a LinkedIn post about it, which was referring to client X. We had told this client 18 months before that we had felt that we weren't the right people to deal with him. I should have left it androgynous, but to deal with him, because we didn't feel that he was aware enough of what his strengths and weaknesses were. And then that 18 months later comes back and says, please can you recruit for me? Please can you recruit for me? And then that was the outcome. So needless to say, he's blacklisted. We just won't. And when he said, look, you'll never work for my company again. So, well, that doesn't sound like a bad outcome for us.
I mean, that's a beautiful space to be in any role where you can choose who you work with. And, just like if you're an employee choosing who you work for, you don't just want to take any job to, just to be a bum on the seat in their organization. You want a place where you're going to find it fulfilling and you're going to have a real outcome. And I always feel that perhaps that's a bit of a theme in the workplace these days, is that people don't just want to work and get paid. They want to do something that they find fulfilling, where they feel like they're adding value from there. I sort of hear talks at the moment about the Great Resignation that's sort of happening in America at the moment, where people sort of coming back from these long extended lockdowns and going, oh gosh, what am I doing from here? Do you think that will flow on to Australia, that Great Resignation? Do you sort of get a sense of people maybe realigning their work with their values a bit more?
Absolutely, especially in some states more so than others. We've obviously been blessed over here in WA, and it has been work as usual for most part of this. But I know where you're looking at Melbourne and Sydney, there definitely has been a okay, where to now?
Yeah. And interestingly, a lot of businesses really didn't handle that period of time particularly well. And I defend those businesses somewhat, because, as business owners and leaders, that was a terrifying time when we went into lockdown. But we saw people who at times weren't paying the JobKeeper allowance to their employees and that sort of thing. So I think that also contributes to them saying, you know what, this industry, and it's not necessarily an industry, but they base the behaviour of that company on an industry and are coming in and saying, I just don't want to work in that space anymore. So it is interesting. I think people definitely are looking at work-life balance because they've had a taste of working from home, and maybe transitioning into careers where that's, the possibility of getting that flexibility is greater. And I think there are some people that just, as you said, realigned the stress levels that they were under, and just sort of said, you know what, this is this is nuts. We also in Western Australia have a very interesting situation at the moment where once again there is huge dollars in mining and mining related services. So you are seeing people who are somewhat short-sighted going, well, I'm going to leave my career, which might be 3 to 5 years, which means their experience then coming back into an industry can be somewhat irrelevant. So that is an interesting choice. And we often say to people, look at where you want to end up and reverse engineer your decision. So, you know, if they do love what they do, it's like getting out of it for an extended period of time might not necessarily be a wise career move. So there is a little bit of consulting around there and a bit of discussion. I think, you know, that's where AIM said, you know, if you're interviewing someone or you're being interviewed, go and make it a discussion. You know, first interview can be formal to establish if they actually have the skills you need for that role. But then that second interview can be, look, what are your long-term goals? And I mean, the first question that we ask people, you know, if you were to have a magic wand, what would you be doing tomorrow? And the amount of people that turn around, you know, in that financial space, well, I'd like to be a nurse. And you think, oh, no, don't say that. Please don't say that. So, you know, it's interesting that people and study, they're studying and that sort of thing in other areas.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, sorry, you go, Jodie.
Sorry, I will also reflect that a lot of people are making decisions based on automation and roles that potentially won't exist within 15 years. So that is, and particularly if they're at the beginning of their career, like looking at a particular industry, what does that look like in 10 or 15 years as far as, you know, automation and roles that simply won't exist?
Yeah. Oh, you're absolutely right. That was sort of one of the things that came to mind when you said leaving the industry for 3 or 5 years. I think, you know, we can look back at the last 5 years and see how much things have changed. They're going to change so much more in the next 5. You know, I don't think there's any denying that. And you know, we need to sort of make sure that obviously we're keeping up to date with things as well. My sort of, I guess, sort of personal experience on some of this as well, you know, I became a mother 14 months ago, and that has changed my ideals around work and some of the things that I want. And I made a decision a couple of months ago to actually move to a 4-day work week. And so I have Mondays off, Tuesdays from home, and then 3 days in the office. And, you know, I love this balance. You know, it sort of came at a cost. I did have to sort of negotiate with my business partners around remuneration and things to sort of have that additional day. But it's almost kind of reinvigorated me work-wise as well. And I've got more family time, but I've still got my dedicated work time. And I think that sometimes having those discussions in your workplaces or the people that you're working with and working out, okay, you know, what else contains it? It's not just necessarily sometimes that the grass is greener elsewhere from there, but how can you make it work? And I think that, you know, I think that employers and workplaces being flexible around some of that and sort of understanding what works in a certain role can be really valuable as well. Now, I want to get into some do's and don'ts around you know, moving through your careers in financial advice and, you know, probably around the sort of interview stages as well. Are there any horror stories you can share with me? We all love a good horror story.
There's too many to probably mention, I have to say. There's definitely one a week where, you know, we're walking into the back room with the shaking of the head.
Oh, and that one, a lot.
Yeah. Especially when, you know, anybody can look amazing on paper, you know, and then, you know, we can write whatever we want on our resume, really. And then when you get down into digging deep, you find out that most of it is quite fictional. It's quite interesting. But yes, we
be candid with the reasons for leaving. You know, we've had people who have been repeatedly performance managed, and they just don't think we will find out, and we do. When dealing with recruiters, don't say one thing with us and say another thing with the client. We've had people come in and say, oh, you know, 85,000 or 120,000. Yeah, we're happy with that. And they sit in front of the client and say, well, I actually want 100 or 150. and that's frustrating. I think it's very, very important to think before you, make that career move to once again, the things that are the no-goes. We've had people come in, showing their, how can I put it, their personal flair in ways that aren't appropriate for an interview. We've had people who've chosen to show a little bit more than what they should at interview, thinking that might go in their favour. Social media, lock your social media down. Oh my goodness!
Unless your social media is your brand,
yes,
then lock it down. If you Googled your name, you would be surprised.
Is that part of the process that you follow when you're sort of getting to the final stages of the candidate? So you do an audit of their online presence?
I think it comes way before the final stages, Cara.
Okay.
Yeah.
And clients are doing it as well.
They do it.
I remember standing in front of a friend who doesn't use agencies. And when I say he's a friend, I keep on having scenarios with men, and I'm very sorry for that. But he said that he'd gone back to a photo, I think it was something like 56 weeks prior, where someone had a photo of a child, and the comment was that, they're not talking at interview, they didn't mention anything. And I dare say that this person may have been holding a friend's baby, or might have been holding, a family baby. It is fascinating to see some people's behaviour around how far they dig. I mean, it would have taken forever for this person to get 56 weeks back on an active Instagram.
It's almost creepy.
It is really creepy.
Very stalkery.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But likewise, there are times where we have people on their, the little round photo that's on social media that is just, we've had someone that had a bucket hat with marijuana leaves all over it, and he just kind of go, "Oh, what are you thinking?" People with duck lips, the sort of doing the whole
with what?
Duck lips.
I can't do this.
Duck face. Sorry, duck
I do
face.
it really well because that's my profile pic.
It's there's definitely a lot about your brand in there and how you want to represent yourself, and that's in person and online. And we all know it's very easy to Google anything these days.
Well, I think in a business context, it's almost the first thing that you do when somebody says, "Hey, you should speak to my advisor, or you should speak to business," or whatever it might be. You jump online and you do have a look. It's sort of natural instinct in a way.
And Glassdoor, on the flip side, candidates are doing it to companies as well. Very much so. We will get people coming back going, "Have you read their Glassdoor?" Like, of course. But, it in this market, it is a candidate market. Companies do not have the upper hand at the moment.
Yeah.
And I think we've spent so much time where companies and clients have judged a candidate and done all this research and gone through social media. Likewise, businesses need to step up their brand as well, and they need to be representing themselves in an authentic way, which means they need to be on socials. I mean, we've just gone to Instagram Reels, which just terrifies me, but people do look at us and they judge us. You may also get people applying, when there isn't an advertised role, saying, "I've watched you guys and your thoughts around certain things on LinkedIn. I see that you're a fun environment. You have a really social environment. If anything becomes available, could you please let me know?" So we're also seeing, So once again, it comes back to it is so important to do your research. On a company and ask some of those questions that we've discussed in this chat.
Yeah. Well, and I think when it comes to social media, whether it's for yourself or for your business, you want that authenticity. You don't want to be having, say, an Instagram reel that's going, "We're a really fun, vibrant, bubbly workplace," and then somebody coming in and no one talks or cracks a joke. You're going to get this cultural a sort of blow up from there.
Yeah.
So, you want it all to make sense and represent you.
Yeah. And going back to the presentation, there is that old saying, and it rings true, is dress for the job you're looking for.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned just a moment ago that it's a candidate market. Employers are really, there's sort of a bit of a shift with talent, for obvious reasons, advisors moving out of the industry, etc. Are we seeing wages going up as a result?
Absolutely. 10 to 20% at least.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
And are you finding employers are keeping up with that advice as well?
It's really interesting. Our advice is to make sure your people are happy, your good people are happy. And it's important to touch base with them, because I can guarantee you, if you have a star performer in your company, there will be somebody chatting to them. So that's crucial.
Yeah, on LinkedIn and that sort of thing, the direct approaches.
Direct approaches for sure. There's also a lot of what we call shopping. So they may have no intention of leaving where they're at, and they're actually having a bit of a gamble, and they're going out and interviewing, and they're getting offers, and sometimes 2 to 3 offers. That is not uncommon at the moment. And then going back, resigning, and all of a sudden they've got 20K extra from their current employer. Very short-sighted, in my opinion.
From the staff member's point of view, or the employee's
you'll remember this market won't be around forever, and we have seen that. We are in the purple patch, and it won't last forever, and people won't have short memories about whether you've done a little shifty on them.
And that's a really good point. On the client side, it is an absolute, it blows their mind when we put a candidate forward and say that in the market they're looking for, as Aim said, they're 10 to 20,000 more, and yet their internal staff are grossly underpaid. And it's that idea where they just say, look, we cannot employ this person, and there's an impossible task of finding someone that is that 10 to 20 grand less. And some clients that say, look, I'm actually going to call an early review, and I'm going to adjust all of my internal staff, because IP is worth something. That intellectual property, when you lose that, it can sometimes cost you the equivalent of not only their wage, but another wage on top of that of the IP that walks out of the door.
Oh, absolutely. And the time spent training and retraining it, you've got to find the right person, of course, first, but then you've got to actually get them to know their job and be good at their job, and then add some to it. Now, we've only got a few minutes left, so I just wanted to come back and again reflect on this slide for a moment. We've talked so much about the different roles. We've talked about advisors leaving the industry and different things that you can be doing to really make your career your own. And so one of the things that I wanted to quickly touch on was a couple of people that I see that are doing things differently out there. And I think this is really relevant for today's market, or to just today's world in a sense. The world is changing so much, and we can make our careers what we want it. And so 2 people that come to mind for me that are really forging their own path, let's call it, are Victoria Devine from Sheet on the Money and Glenn James from My Millennial Money. I'll say these are both AFA royalty. Let's be honest here, that most people that sort of follow AFA networks would know these 2, and both of them have really, I would say, gone to strength in their Facebook groups that have, literally hundreds of thousands of people in them. They've got books, they've got online programs for managing your money, and then they're working as advisors, or in Glenn's case now, a coach as well. So there's lots of different things that people can sort of be doing. And again, just working with your own personality and your own flair, I think, is really important. I've got, quite a few advisor friends here in Perth that are getting into the podcast space. There's others that are more writing articles and blog pieces, and there's others that are just working beautifully quietly in the background. Not everybody needs to be out there in the public forum. If you've got the flair, then that works for you, then I think you follow it. Otherwise, find your own path from there. But again, I just thought these 2 were really important to highlight just some of the ways that you can create your own path and just be a little creative in what you want to achieve within your profession. So just quickly before we wrap up, I wanted to give a quick plug for the AFA mentoring program. We've been talking a lot about advancing within roles, about interviews, and about things you should be doing or not doing in your career. And the AFA has their mentoring program. A new one will be launching in the beginning of 2022, which is only a few short months away now from there. So jump online to the AFA's website, register your interest and get on board. And that goes for both mentors and mentees. If you feel like you've got some things to add to the our more up and coming members of the industry, then jump on board there. Now, the content that you have heard today will be recorded and it will be available on the AFA website in about a week's time. But all registrants will receive an email once that is available, and your CPD points will be available in that time as well. So get in touch with the AFA if you've got any questions. But thank you to everybody on the call for joining us today. And thank you, Amy, and thank you, Jodie, for your time and your wisdom and your insight. You've been absolutely amazing. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I hope everyone else has as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Okay, take care, ladies.
Have an amazing day,
everyone.
Enjoy the day. Bye.
Bye.